Welcome back. The King of Calypso, Harry Belafonte, who stormed the pop charts and smashed racial barriers in the 1950s with his highly personal brand of folk music, and who went on to become a dynamic force in the civil rights movement, died on the 25th of April at his home on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He was 96. The cause was congestive heart failure, said Ken Sunshine, his longtime spokesman. To give us more details on Belafonte is Professor Earle Taylor and the impact he had on history. Professor, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you.
Now, as I mentioned in the intro, Belafonte was known as a singer, actor, civil rights activist who broke down racial barriers, amongst others. But talk to us about what made him really stand out from the rest of his peers.
Harry was born with the Jamaican gene, and he spent his formative life in Jamaica, moving back from the United States, where he was incidentally born. He returned to Jamaica with his parents and lived like any ordinary person. He was not rich, but he had the enjoyment and the creativity that was existing in the environment during his time. And music has always been an expression of Jamaicans, music and dance. And I guess that comes from the African root. And so he developed the skill and the art in both music and dance. As a young person, and was inspired by a number of people in those days, some of which were seeking political offices, some were just being themselves. So Harry epitomizes the Jamaican, just like Bob Marley, rooted in the country, absorbed the culture, and expressed it in many ways, even adding his own dimensions to that expression.
Now, of course, we also know that Belafonte was sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Fantastic. Now, we know also that Belafonte was also fondly known as an award-winning artist who was nicknamed the King of Calypso. Briefly talk to us about, his music career.
Harry made his debut on the backs of Jamaican folk songs. And in fact, I don't know of any other country in the world that so many things and so many songs have been made about it, about Jamaica. Harry had that repertoire, that entourage of musical options. Calypso, later then reggae, then twist, and also popular jazz. But he had an array of options, and he chose the folk songs of Jamaica. Deo, Island in the Sun, I Left My Little Girl in Kingston Town. It was on those backs that he became the legend, and he opened the doors for many others that followed. The Bob Marleys and the Peter Tosh. He actually led the way on international scale and opened the door for Jamaican musicians.
Professor Earle, I just want to know, as we round off our discussion this evening, how you'll remember Belafonte, and what do you think his legacy will be that's being left behind? And perhaps talk to us about, your fondest memory of Belafonte.
I believe the legacy that Harry will leave is one of, he was a humble person, very humble. He was very focused. He was a revolutionist. He was a Pan-Africanist, first of all. And he identified with Africa probably more than a lot of the people who now are assuming that position. He was grounded. He studied Africa. He lived in Africa during the times when he was with the period before Mandela, and even at the time when he met Mandela. I remember Harry, one of his I think cousins had rented an apartment from me in Kingston, and Harry came down, and I met him for the first time, and he was a giant. It was one of my greatest experiences. The lady was giving me problems because she was not paying the rent, and Harry says, "Don't worry. If it's not paid, it is paid." And so I believed him, and so she got carried by that. But Harry was a fantastic person, and then he was given one of the highest honors in Jamaica for his various achievements.
Thank you.
And I also met him at that time. And I think generally he represented Jamaica. He represented Black people all over the globe.
Thank you,
and
Professor.
he was not only a Jamaican. He was like Marcus Garvey. He was a Pan-Africanist, a true Pan-Africanist.
Professor Earle Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely speaking to you. That was Professor Earle Taylor speaking to us via Zoom on the life and legacy of Harry Belafonte. That wraps up today's edition of the Daily Roundup. We'll be back tomorrow, same time and place from us.